Hi, everybody. Welcome to Maddox AI and Post Sale Summit. You are currently watching Build a CS Leadership Command Center. I'm super excited to introduce our speaker, Jeff Kushmerek, the CEO and founder at Infinite Renewals. Jeff, to kick us off, we have a tradition of asking our speakers an icebreaker question. So the one for you is, what's one AI use case you wish existed but haven't seen yet?
Yeah, totally selfish on this one, and it is not customer success related at all. When you've got multiple children playing multiple sports and a band in about three different schedules, I need that one schedule. I know I could build this myself, but I haven't done it. But not just showing the view, but the reminders, the auto deflections, and all of that stuff. Like that would make my life a lot easier. So that's the one.
I love
Sorry,
it. I love
sorry
it.
to disappoint if you're looking for a CS related one.
No, no.
So
I mean, the rest of the session is CS focused, so I
right,
think we can take a break from that for
yeah,
this question. Cool. So before we get started, just a reminder to all our attendees, feel free to ask Jeff any questions using the Q&A functionality. At the end of it, we will go ahead and ask Jeff all those questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jeff.
awesome. Thanks. I will share my screen. Here we go. Okay. And so I'm gonna just leave it in this mode so I can. If it distracts you, I'm sorry, but it's just super easy for me to skip through if somebody asks a question, which might not happen. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you about a fun but very, very useful and practical tool that we built for a customer recently. And we basically had to combine Intercom and HubSpot in just one sort of application. And when Bex and I were talking about this, beforehand, this is just an example of taking all of the APIs that are out there, using these AI tools that we have in front of us, and saying, I'm going to build the UI I want. I'm not going to rely on a product management person to say this is my tool to use or this is the view that I need to do. We can build these on our own. Just to get into a couple things here. This is not anything to do with the Fin AI agent that's out there. That was working great. We had launched that. We saw just immediate drop in deflection numbers and things like that. FinAI is a newer part of the Intercom product suite. And what we wound up happening, and this team had transitioned over from Dynamics, which is an old school application. This is an ERP company, and in the woodworking space, and they basically had a really hard time with people who had been doing this support function for years. Like, there were people 5, 10, 15 years where they were doing it. And even the support leader and myself, and I have somebody on my team, Renee, who's been a longtime support leader, she's having real problems working with the way that this company's tickets came in. And I've seen this with other customers as well, too. The view that it kept defaulting with, just to let you know if you haven't used Intercom or had the features turned on in this way, is that if I'm the support manager or the VP or whatever, or I'm the one responsible for assigning tickets out to people, in which they need to do. They can't do everything round robin because of all the specialties in this particular software. If they clicked on a ticket in Intercom to see what the status or what the request looked like, it would bump it out of this aging list. And this team really worked with inside of let's see the aging list, let's see what's active. Intercom kind of works like this river that's always like flowing, and you see what's currently moving. And the way that this support team worked is more of in a traditional, like, here's my list, let's assign these things out there. And so what would wind up happening is you'd see a bunch of tickets, you'd click on it to read it in Intercom, and then it would kind of disappear if you were trying to think about who would work on what, especially if you're reviewing multiple tickets at once. And that made it really hard, and customers were definitely getting upset. So there was another part of the thing that made the job harder, and it gets into this triage, and then they would have to jump systems, especially essentially having to jump over to HubSpot. for a few things, but one particular one was the entitlement, as in saying, do they have access to this particular product suite? Is this maybe not turned on? Or it just became it's a big part of the support triage. And so they would go look at an intercom, they would go over to there, and then they'd come back to intercom, and the ticket would sort of not be there, or they would do a few at once and batch them up. And so it happened enough that we were starting to see some real bad domino effects from this. So, I got together and was talking with the support leader and just basically, and I had my call recorder going and everything for it. So I'll tell you exactly how you can do this yourself I use Claude for this example, but just as a side note, I'm a former developer, so I'm comfortable looking at APIs and working within Claude Code and everything, but you can definitely do this in CoWork as well too. I basically used my conversations with the support leader, interviewing what would work best, how would this look in all of those types of things, and found a way to basically get a consolidated list of requirements saying, listen, I, as the support leader, need to log in every day and see X, Y, and Z. And I would need to be able to assign tickets. I need to be able to look at a variety of different reports, and we built some advanced stuff that I'll show you a couple of screenshots. Just as a note, I would love to deploy the live application, but it is literally a company's live support data. So I've grabbed some screenshots and blurred them out, and just to prevent things going on, so you can guess who it is. And nobody wants to expose their dirty laundry through support tickets. So what we exactly did here was I had this interview process. I had all of these things I used Granola for a note taker, and I hooked up, my Claude. I have a project for this particular company, and I just basically went through about a spec creation, which I now have a spec creation skill, which is essentially everything that this person's asking for. Go look at the Intercom APIs and the HubSpot APIs and let us know it's possible. We do this a lot. Sometimes you have to say, hey, you need to add a field here or do X, Y, and Z here, or maybe you need us to go create everything there. We were lucky in the sense we didn't have to do any field creations or whatnot. And I'm also going to talk about some deployment features here as part of this, because this is one of those science experiments that took off and everybody wanted access to it. And you can't do that if it's just running on your laptop, essentially. So I built this one essentially, the first rev on my laptop as a proof of concept, where we pulled all these open tickets in, anything where the product lines were split out, were some other requirements, and basically wanted to show the status, the owner, the subject, and some other things here. So I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like here. And this was the POC that I built out. We turned the production one looking a little bit differently and some branding and things like that. And if you've built this before, it just will launch in HTML and essentially a React application on your laptop or wherever you're building. But essentially here, we've got all of the actions here are send to Teams, send to Slack, or is the way that we enabled it here. We removed the Slack when we went live. We felt Teams was the better way. Here's the age of the tickets here, so we could see exactly what was going on. And now you see that these, we have 14 days, 15 days. Just a note, since we've released this, they've got no tickets, bad English there. They have no tickets that go beyond 20 days of being waiting on an answer and things like that. So it has definitely helped tremendously here. But essentially, they wanted to see priority, they wanted to see age, they wanted to see if there was anybody assigned to them, and if so, then they could reach out and say, hey, what's going on with X, Y, and Z, the date created, some of the classic things here. Past due, so we set some thresholds in the application saying if it's gone beyond defined SLA terms, then we're going to mark it either current or past due. And then if it's a ticket type, whether it's a feature request or problem or the different types of things that you have there. Company obviously blurred out here, and the subject and things like that. You'll see along the top, again, these were things that we came right out of the requirements. Like, I, as a support leader, need to see the critical issues. This company runs a production ERP, so if this system is down, their customers are like dead in the water. So they need to always know critical. And we did write some alerting to teams so that if a critical issue pops up now, we have it immediately pop open in Teams as well too, so they know that. And that's where you see the alerts here, and we can see how many alerts are firing and who are getting them. And then just some different filters along the top here: assigned, what's stalled, and then we have the team load, so we can see each individual person. Sorry, I wish I could show it to you, but it's super sensitive information. But we have the team load, so all the different people in support, how many tickets they have going on right now, and then week over week statistics there. So we also found that the intercom reporting, and again, the help desk features, not the customer agent or the AI, the Fin AI product, just had some real, we just had, again, it might work for a lot of people and we've got customers that love it. But just the way that this business runs, it was not exactly working out for them. So again, let's build a UI that works for us. We are in this age now. I'm sure you've seen Salesforce and HubSpot. They've basically said it's a headless AI. It's a headless unit. You can use AI. You can pull stuff in now. So we've done that. So,
Hey,
so
Jeff,
that, go ahead. Yeah.
quick question. Do you mind going into slideshow mode? Because I think people are having
Oh,
trouble
sure.
seeing it.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Yeah. Hopefully that's better. Sorry about that. I'm always afraid it's going to blow up the Zoom thing. So hopefully you can see it a little better. Obviously the slides are getting sent out. But as you can see here, we can filter by ticket type, sort by date created. I built in a search functionality here. Auto refresh happens now. That was just for demo purposes. What now? And as you see here, I put this demo mode alert when we were in demo mode for this because we wanted to really give people the understanding that if they clicked on one of these things, it would not send it to it. It's not aged and it's fine. Don't worry about it type of mode here. So again, I was highlighting, we've got the critical alert, we've got the number of alerts fired, the aging queue, which we're looking at, which becomes sort of the main cockpit view, unassigned, stalled, which has gone basically over 72 hours. And then again, team load, how many tickets each individual person has assigned to them. And then a whole bunch of week over week reporting that we built there. So, all right. Always cognizant of time. I want to walk through a couple things because, as I said, this was easy. It basically got a spec. If you're wondering how to do this yourself, I validated the spec and made sure everything was working, read it back with the team, and then I loaded it and got it. I would advise, if you're not familiar with coding, you would basically have it come up with instructions. So if you're not used to doing this in Claude, you can say, I want to build this inside of Claude. If you're in chat, I want to build this inside of Cowork. Please give me the instructions to do that. And if you're not used to using something like a terminal or things like that, it'll even give you the exact times when to go and do that. I find it very easy. Just as a note, like my daughter is doing this for me as well. She's a sophomore in college and had not been using terminal at all or anything like that. And we've built out a whole bunch of these proof of concept demos as well too. So as I said, it ran. I always do this, by the way. I go over slides and just hang on one and go over like five slides worth of things here. But this is here for you to read later. But we definitely ran this in a read-only version at first, and I advise you to do that if you're creating these types of applications, especially if you're worried about clicking on something and then it gets marked as read and you're like, oh no. And so we made sure that didn't happen for the demo purposes. And also the way that the fields are set up in the application, they can read the issue and then assign it. But when they read the issue, it won't be marked as being read. And that's what was happening in Intercom there. So that was great. And then we went into deployment mode. So essentially, I went over these slides. So I really wanted to go over a couple things here. So when we're talking about the deployment mode, this is how I did it. Using Claude Cowork. So essentially, you open up a terminal on your screen here, but I did exactly what I told you. I got the instructions created and then dropped them into Cowork. And then the difference between that and Claude Code would be I would be, adding code blocks in there, and the terminal is actually inside of Claude Code versus Cowork, where it's like, hey, go do this. now go copy this thing and drop it, paste it into your terminal and something. It's just makes it a little faster that way. I hadn't used code in that sense before. I'm using it now, but I was in a hurry mode, so I didn't want to have to to figure it out along the way. So I find this is a very easy way to get proof of concepts and demos off the ground. Make sure you're building the right purpose for there, and then get it ready for like that production use that you might want to get it into, especially if, in this application, suddenly the sales team heard about it. They're like, "Can we see that?" We sometimes get phone calls from our customers, and they start complaining, and we like to see if they have if they've actually filed tickets and what the status of them are, because sometimes customers will say things on a call to a salesperson that's not actually the truth, and so it was nice to give them that. But also the CEO was going on a road trip, and he wanted to make sure that on a listening party, and wanted to make sure that he always knew he wasn't walking into a conversation, or if he was going to go visit a customer, how many tickets they had open and how critical they were as well too. So in a couple quick things here, use a sample token. I had to generate one. I had to create an application inside of HubSpot, which is easy to do if you've done it before. Again, if you're not used to doing that, Claude Chat will walk you through those exact steps that you have to do and go do that. Because as I said, I've had a background building some enterprise applications. I kind of knew what I was doing, but it was great to get some of these reminders, and things change a lot too. So I wouldn't worry about these fast query endpoints and stuff. It's more for you to go over there. But we just made sure that the application on the front end just worked really fast, because it was constantly getting refreshed. And so we built in little things like, refresh the next 30 instead of like 500, because that would take time and things like that. All right. So I'm going to go down to the next one. This is how you actually deploy it, right? Because for the 2 weeks where I was demoing this, the support team wanted to just log into my laptop, which cannot be done. This company, actually, because it's an ERP, has lots of security in place. So essentially, I got on with their RevOps and CTO team, and walked them through what the application was, and basically said, "Hey, listen, how would you like to deploy this?" And they said, "Actually, we have built the stub of an app framework, but this is the first one that we're going to release." So, it became sort of this fluid conversation. Can you do X? Can you do Y? Can you break this up in X, Y, and Z way? What wound up happening is I just gave them all of the underlying Python files, and they deployed it into their architecture, which I'm just going to fast forward here. Looks like this. And this is how, by the way, if you've built real applications, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, there's a lot that goes into it. They wanted the code to be in their GitHub, and then there's a container which just basically builds the application. It goes into Azure, it deploys it into a cluster, and then there's all these permissions on it, because they need to make sure that if the URL ever got exposed to the outside world, that you could only access that application if you had permissions to do so. So it goes through their VPN and make sure that you've got intercom access and things like that. So a lot. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to show you the situation where you've built something that is sitting on your laptop, and then suddenly it's sitting out there. And so in a big deployed application, what a lot of people might ask is say, well, why couldn't you just deploy this through like the HubSpot MCP, or build it out in Lovable and things like that? So if you're on either, I'll just say Salesforce or HubSpot, they have these MCP applications which will allow you to pull data in and create these apps. But if the MCP or the HubSpot or the Salesforce doesn't have access to a particular data field, like in this scenario, Intercom was not connected to HubSpot to pass all of this data back and forth. They don't allow that in their integrations because they're competitive in certain areas. And then there was the Dynamics data that we needed to pull out as well too. So because of that, we have to build essentially what's called a containerized app, and we can't deploy that inside of your CRM. I will say that asterisk, this was a point in time, and both CRMs, HubSpot and Salesforce, are moving to a framework where that's not going to happen. They're both in beta around that. So for the meantime, you would say either, hey, we're not going to pull that field in, or yes, we can, but we can't deploy it as like a HubSpot application or a HubSpot Breeze agent or a Salesforce agent. We need to deploy it as a sort of regular app. Which if you have a DevOps or RevOps or mostly DevOps team, no big issue. It was like literally a 5 minute conversation. They had no questions asked. I gave them the code. They took care of the rest. So notice I'm almost at time. The things that made this super successful and did some best practices here. We're communicating via API. We are not doing like what customer success platforms do and things like that, which is take one copy of the data and then move the data over there, and then it's sitting in a second siloed database. This is live data that's being passed around on an API, so you never have to worry about data getting old. It works just like a web application, and so that's a big thing there. Nobody wants to build out their another CRM or another database to house all of this. So okay, so knowing that, we went over the deployment. That's what this looks like. Actual system diagram of what that looked like here. Just to show you that this is how your DevOps team thinks, and this is totally normal and not overly complicated here. But just to let you know a couple things here, knowing that we're going to want to get into questions here. These security things are a big reason why it's fine to test these things out in Lovable and to test them out on Claude Code or anything like that. But you got to be super careful around these applications when you build them out to make sure that you can't like blow away production data, that nobody can get access to your application. Like I mentioned here, I'm sure a lot of you heard about this Railway a few weeks ago that they built this AI app, and it might have been Claude, but essentially it wound up hacking the production database, trying to fix a problem, and wound up blowing away the production database. So we had to put in all of the bells and whistles around that to make sure that it doesn't happen, because as I said, this went from 1 or 2 people needing it to like 50. And so it needed to be a supported app like that. One wrap up note before we get to the questions. The AI agent was not the issue here. The issue here was the help desk. It was the for this team non-usable UI to fit their particular business cases. The other thing is really look, if you have your CRM, if you're on your Salesforce, or if you're on your HubSpot, see if you can deploy all of this, and if all of the data is being passed through the CRM, because that'll make your deployment look a lot easier. It won't look like what I had there. It could literally just be deployed as like an agent or an assistant inside of HubSpot or Salesforce. Use APIs instead of pulling into an additional database. The database is a little bit of a scary way to go, and then you're always using the CRM or the other application as the source of truth, and you're not getting into these outdated data things and creating reports that aren't valid because your data is not being synced on a timely manner. That's where you see a lot of problems like that with success platforms and CRMs. The data gets out of sync because they're not refreshing, they're just pulling copies down and things like that. And if it gets successful, reach out to whoever's around your team, whether it's a DevOps or RevOps, and getting from that local host laptop to production was really where all the work was here. It wasn't a lot of work that I did, but basically gave the source code for the front end, and then the Python for for all of the API creation to the team. And again, they're used to handling hundreds of apps like that, and it wasn't a big deal for them. So I think that was it. Yeah, and then it was go build your own version of this. So I can turn it on, being cognizant of time, I wanted to make sure that I was able to answer any questions that might have come through here. Oh,
Yeah.
besides going into presenter mode. Sorry about that, Andrea.
And just a reminder to everyone, you can drop your questions in chat or in the Q&A. First question, Jeff, what's the QA process like for
Yeah.
something like this? What are
Yeah.
the steps? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. It is literally pulling up a record inside of the app and then pulling it up inside of whatever the source data is. So, is the first way of looking at it, right? So, if I'm looking at a ticket inside the thing that I built, we would then go inside of Intercom. We would make sure that those were in sync. We would then also make sure that the entitlements were correct in HubSpot as well too. And then we would also create some reports and we would verify them against the out of the box intercom reports and then extend from there as well too. So that was a big part of the Q&A because we're using APIs and using internal identifiers. It really reduces a lot of the errors that were going on.
Can you go a little deeper into what the process was like from going from your computer to
Yep.
something
Yep.
production? Yeah.
Yeah, so every company is a little bit different, but most people have a RevOps, and a lot of companies have either a DevOps or an outside DevOps team. Basically, this whole I was lucky, and this happens a lot, where this problem is like one of the number one problems of the organization. So I said, okay, let's go fix X, and if I go do this, and I built out a proof of concept will we be able to have the resources to bring this to production? They said, absolutely. So I built that over the span of about a week and a half, made sure that it worked for all of the users, the core users first. Then I brought it to the RevOps team and I said, can you deploy this? And they said, absolutely. We have an AI intern. But then because we had the basically couldn't deploy it inside of HubSpot because of the intercom stuff and couldn't deploy it inside of intercom because of the HubSpot stuff. We went and talked to the CTO and I said, listen, I've got source level Python here, and then I've got an HTML front end that pulls in the files. They said no problem. Got a meeting with the CTO. He basically outlined his deployment architecture and said, as long as you can give me the files that can get deployed to GitHub, we're good to go. We will take care of the tokens, and they have to do some other things like token rotation. They are using their company's core SSO and Okta for permissioning, so they just have to connect that into the application, which again, that's a common thing that they do as well too. Then they released it live and then made sure that you could only connect to it via being inside of their firewall. And then so they basically flipped the switch on a Friday afternoon, which is the best time to test these types of things. We all kicked it around for a while, and luckily, this doesn't always happen. Didn't have any issues, and people were immediately starting to use it. Yeah.
Awesome.
The other thing I want to say back, we talked about this originally, is I brought in the context of like support data because that was like the biggest problem. You can do the same exact thing for your CS in all, you can build your own dashboard, you can build your own reports, you can build all of these things. The real key thing I wanted to make sure was clear here is we talked to people, we used our AI to query the product's APIs to see if we could build this application. It said yes. Now here's your instructions to go build it, and then we built it to spec. But that could be, it could be a finance tool, it could be a CS tool, it could be a sales tool. It's all the same way. And then there's the how do you take it to production, because if you build these things and they're useful, then you want your team to have access to them as well too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff. I know we're close to time,
Yep.
and that was all the questions we got. So thank you for answering those. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. The recording of this session will be available in our resource hub, which we'll share tomorrow. Because I know Jeff covered a lot of things. So if you want to be playing it side by side as you're doing it, you will have that opportunity. Definitely recommend connecting with Jeff on LinkedIn. Just so if you have any other questions or want to pick his brain, you'll be able to.
I appreciate it. I wanted to show you, basically like you can build complex stuff and make it go live, right? And so I know I covered a lot of stuff, but it's all there in the deck, and I wanted to go over those concepts. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. This is definitely like I feel like everyone's thinking about the possibilities of AI, but not sure exactly what they can do, and you really unlocked a huge thing they can do.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jeff, for joining us, and thank you to everyone else for attending. Have a great rest of
Thank
your
you.
day.
Bye.
Bye.